This week on Great Chat, we discuss startup beefs, who benefits, who loses, and how you should think about rivalries for your own business. I'm Angela, and this week I'm joined by Helen and Ashley. Great Chat is brought to you by Mercury, the fintech used by entrepreneurs through every stage of company building. We use Mercury to run this podcast and love recommending it to other founders and fund managers. Try it for yourself. Visit Mercury.com to join over 200,000 entrepreneurs who use Mercury to make managing their money unbelievably simple.
Hi.
Hey guys.
Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. I returned victorious from my first ever RV trip into the redwood forests. I learned what a stinky slinky is. It's the pipe that connects to the RV and deposits all the sewage into the sewage hole.
Yeah,
I've
never heard that. But there's black water and gray water, right?
Yeah.
I forgot which is critical to know, but I didn't know that the hose itself had a name. Ugh. Was it like a Class B camper van? Like, how big was this thing?
It fits 7 people, so it was like enormous.
Wow.
It's like driving a boat around. But someone was,
And you guys actually drove it?
we drove it. Yeah.
Like, okay, did you guys take turns or?
No.
Just Zach drove the whole time?
I refused to drive.
Got it.
But it was much better than I expected. It was very clean inside. It was very functional.
Yeah.
And Helen, I know you camp a lot. Ashley, I don't know if you're a camper or not, but I feel like I'm kind of converted.
Nope.
Like, you're not sleeping on the ground. You have actual like beds and pillows and blankets. There's a restroom that you can easily access. There's a shower. You can turn the heat on at night.
Did you use the shower?
Well, okay.
It's like four drops of water coming out of
judge
this
us,
hose.
but none of us showered for 2 days. Not because it was like dirty.
That's the real way.
It was just
That's
like too much mental. But like not having to like get up and put on your shoes and coat and walk out to use the restroom, like amazing. And you can go camping in the winter because you can turn the heat on and it's
right.
Yeah. So I think we're converted.
Angela, I was watching your Instagram stories and I feel like it's very much like a boat where like every square inch has like a purpose and very intentionally designed. And probably like a boat, yes, the shower is like less than one would wish for from a water pressure standpoint, but still a miracle that it exists.
Did you feel hopeful, like that if we had another pandemic, that you would like live a camper van life and, you know, it would be less of a lockdown, but more like a mobile lockdown?
I don't know if there's anything more terrifying than being locked in a camper van with my 2 children, like driving around the country. That sounds like the end of time. So
I don't know. I feel like a lot of city dwellers were saying that the worst thing was being locked at home. Like, I had friends in Manhattan who were like stuck in a 800 square foot apartment with 2 kids.
Grass is always greener.
Being in an RV in Humboldt County, we could not have felt further away from Silicon Valley and the AI crazy. Yeah. I feel like we're in a world of like, you're in the bubble that we live in, and then there's like AI technology hasn't even, Amazon hasn't even reached this land yet, you know, but there's no AI in the redwood forest.
They don't have Prime. They don't have 2-day Prime. Okay. That's funny.
But maybe that's the solution of like, if robots come for us all in the cities, we just all live in RVs in the forest.
I took a Twitter break over Thanksgiving and I was telling the chat, like when I came back, you know, I feel like I didn't know anybody I saw in the feed and I missed like important storylines. Like you only see like the responses to them. So catching up was interesting. But then like, I think the next day it was just all David Sachs stans. And I was like, I didn't know David Sachs needed stands, but okay, I missed something. And then I read the New York Times piece. So curious, you know, what you guys thought of. Did you read the full New York Times piece? I guess that's the first question, because we did discuss the reactions to them, which some of them are even longer than the piece itself.
Wait, but for those of us who haven't read the piece, can you guys Just give a
Yeah.
TLDR of what the original sin was for the New York Times.
I can take a stab, and then Helen, feel free to fill in any gaps. I think I skimmed it would be like the accurate way to describe my consumption. I mean, TLDR, it was about how, David Sachs is very entrenched, tech industry insider, has made tons of investments, has lots of tech friends. And now he has his appointment as the AI and crypto czar in the Trump administration. And it was sort of calling into question, like, how divested is he from all of his various holdings and like the policies he's putting forward? Are they enriching his friends? I don't think they had any like real like gotcha. Like I wasn't like scandalized by anything in the article, and maybe I'm just too cynical these days, but it kind of struck me as like, yeah, any industry person who is hyper connected, who then goes into a government post, is going to have a lot of ties to that industry. And especially if he has been selected specifically to champion the policies that benefit his sector, then yes, like we're gonna see some of that vast ecosystem of connections and companies and holdings benefit from his work. So that was kind of my, like, it felt like, yeah, you could say this about pretty much anyone.
Yeah, I felt like it was a nothing burger, but with like kind of a grabbing headline, right? And so I think that was the part that was, I would say, most frustrating for people. I mean, even if you have absolutely no horse in the race and no context, you're just like, the headline didn't match the article. And so it sort of felt like to me that the article wasn't meant for me. And the article was probably not meant for literally anybody on Twitter. So
I mean, the article was like not meant for anyone in tech. Even if you are not a David Sachs stan, the article is not for you, because it was just funny how they even described like the tech industry. There was this one paragraph that I tweeted about because I just found it so funny. Because it was like framed as an accusation, but it was like, Craft Ventures has made hundreds of investments, including in companies owned by David Sachs's friends. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to tech, where it's like super networked, and like his LPs would be furious if he didn't get into the rounds of his like most impressive friends. It was written in a way to scandalize things that are actually quite normalized within tech. And so like that to me was like, oh, I could go through this article and like rewrite it in a way where it would be much more credible to like a tech audience, and a little bit less like pearl clutching, and maybe more just like, I don't know, I think there are interesting questions about who has the most influence and power in DC right now, and what does that mean for the tech industry, and is David Sachs the right person to do that? I think they focused on the wrong things, and I had some fun like back-channeling going with friends. And one of them was like, he absolutely has like, lost money by taking this post. I mean, I think he sold a bunch of crypto, although Bitcoin's down right now. So maybe he's now looking good. And divested himself from certain investments that are doing well. But like that, again, I feel like this misses a broader point, which is like, I think there's an assumption that the wealthiest people care about money most of all, when in fact, I think what they care about is power and influence. And that is why it was like an easy trade to like divest from certain investments to ascend to this like, position of power, a position where he can get like everyone on Twitter to like support him, and Sam Altman to tweet. And I don't know, it just like, it just felt it felt like it was written for, my aunt, who is not in tech and doesn't know too much, and thinks like, oh, these people are bad and this is bad, and not for like a super sophisticated audience, which I hypothetical aunt, this is not about you in any particular. You're very
Ashley's aunt is a loyal listener.
Yeah.
Disclaimer before any Christmas meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
At Thanksgiving, I did learn that certain family members are listening to the pod, so that was a funny experience for me. But no, it was not written for like a super savvy, like tech savvy, politics savvy audience. And I think that was a miss.
The only thing I'll add to that is it was a nice reminder that, yes, the New York Times is much broader than the people on Twitter. And like, the thing I always say, which is that like Twitter is not a channel the way that like I think we used to traditionally, as marketers think about Twitter as a channel, Facebook as a channel, LinkedIn as a channel, Instagram as a channel. It's like, no, Twitter is a very specific audience of people. And so let's give the New York Times the benefit of the doubt that they had like 3 or 5 reporters working on this over the course of many months, that they anticipated a reaction like this. Then who was this really for? It was for, there are 11 million subscribers. And that's, I guess, like a nice reminder that like tech is not the real world. But I think the second thing that was sort of like sad about this was they really honed in on, his role as AI czar, right? AI and crypto czar. And at a time where I feel like the narrative on AI is, sort of malleable, right? I think that like we talk about AI every week, but like the average person's thoughts on AI, it's like you actually have to really think about what their day to day looks like, whether it's going to be like a job threat, whether it's like really appending their processes and the way that they work, like whether it's something that they maybe really love because they downloaded an app that's like amazing to them. Like you really don't know. And so I feel like it's still early innings on like shaping the brand of AI and public perception of what AI is. And I felt like this piece sort of too tightly coupled like David Sachs and big tech and, tech and VCs with AI because of his like title. And sort of like, I don't know, like I didn't love that because I think we always talk about why did we start this podcast? And one, because it's fun and we're talking about this stuff anyways. Let's just like talk about it live. But it's also like, you can be pro tech, pro progress, pro AI, all of these things. Pro capitalism, and like also just like not be painted as just like, a greedy, power hungry person. Like I think that there is just nuance missing in the conversation. And we thought we brought a fresh perspective to that. And I don't know. It was sort of sad for me on the sort of like the brand of AI, which I don't know if many people are thinking of, but
yeah, it's funny. I think if you asked like most tech people who are like 5 or 10 names you most deeply associate with the future of AI, like David Sachs wouldn't even be on that list, right? And I don't mean that as like offense to
frankly,
him, but
or
like
crypto,
so many
which is
people.
so funny, or crypto.
I know.
But maybe because of the All In podcast, like a really large audience of people like actually would couple him with crypto and AI. So I don't know.
I think like the All In podcast, like its evolution over the past couple of years is like less of a tech audience and more of a beyond tech, explaining.
I think friends that have gone
non-tech.
to like the All In Summit will say that the audience is all non-tech people, even if the tech people are on stage, and you really understand the reach and influence that All In has, sort of like grown over the years.
Can we talk about like the Twitter battle?
Oh my gosh, please.
Around this piece, especially with the New York Times reaction, because this was
because we disagreed
on in our group chat.
Yeah.
Not us.
Right.
We disagreed with Sally, who's not here to defend her point.
But basically, yes, the New York Times. What is it? The New York Times communication department, or like basically the New York Times' own PR team, spokesperson for the New York Times, retweeted like maybe David Sachs's post.
So David Sachs did a Twitter rant. Like David Sachs very much knew how to play this to his advantage.
100%. He called it a hit piece.
Yeah, as far as like tech Twitter is concerned, this was like a massive victory for David Sachs because he got to call the New York Times a hoax. Everyone and their mother came out of the woodwork to praise him and slam the New York Times. And so he had this like very long tweet that I did not read. But like the beginning was like, New York Times is like a hoax factory or something. And then I think he like tries to debunk the piece.
Yeah.
And the New York Times, from its like main corporate account, quote tweets David Sachs's rant, which of course is like all caps, very Trumpian, like lots of all caps, whatever, and share a screenshot. They don't even write like native to the app, a screenshot of a statement from a spokesperson, no name, that is like the New York Times stands behind its reporters, whatever. And it was just like I think we understand all of the reasons behind them doing what they did.
Right. Some of the reasons that came up were like maybe they felt internal pressure to do so, to stand up for the reporters, right? Like, because we don't know what the internal comms or the sort of internal, whether there was backlash or controversy. So I thought that was a good point that Sally made. Like maybe they felt like they had to do that.
Or maybe wanted to be on offense, right? Like they're like, you're being combative, we'll be combative. But the problem is they like they didn't do it in a Twitter appropriate format, right? Like you can't fight an individual with a huge platform and personality and agenda with like a corporate statement attributed to an anonymous spokesperson and like have that go well. And my perspective is they just should have like ignored David.
I shared that perspective.
You're having your little like fit over here. Very nice for you. We have our 11 million readers,
paid subscribers. Yeah, exactly. And so I felt like it gave too much. It played right into, the narrative that he was setting up, and that he was the, victim, and like all of these things that I feel like were perfectly laid, and they just walked right into it. But who knows? I mean, I think Twitter is its own audience, its own game. And if you're going to engage, right, if you're going to engage at all, because oftentimes I think the right thing is to just, that's not your primary channel, then, sit this one out. And I think that we'll talk about this in a second as our main topic, but like as the dominant brand or as the bigger brand, you don't have to always participate, right, in those battles. You don't have to acknowledge the smaller brand. And they did. So it was just so bizarre.
So bizarre. Also, the one other funny, very Twittery thing was like, so many people tweeted in David Sachs' defense. And so I saw a couple tweets along the lines of like hearkening back to a prior great chat topic. I want to see the group chats that were the call to action for this show of support. Because it was like, it did feel quite coordinated, and who knows, maybe it was organic and a couple people did it and then other people felt inspired. And I do think it's in a lot of people's interest, investors, founders, to like have a good relationship with David Sachs, and, having a pro AI, pro crypto, pro tech agenda in the White House is certainly benefiting a lot of people in this industry. But it was funny to see, and I was like, yes, in. There are group chats happening.
I think that is the era we're in. I would describe the Trump era as one where, everything has a price. And so I feel like that is very different. And I think that is like one of the biggest shakeups in terms of just like institution and like norms. And so I'm simplifying this too much, but it's just like, yeah, because I think we're in this era where like people see clear ROI from doing things like that. And so that's why another reason why it feels so like different and funky. But anyways, okay, enough about this. I'm sure we'll see many, many more like, love story ode to David Sachs's as the week unfolds.
I think we'll also see more coverage pushing back on tech. Like we've just been in this like unfettered growth phase, and whether it's coming from legacy media or some of the industries that maybe are going to start feeling the disruption. But like
people need a villain, and I feel like for so long that villain was like finance. And when you think about the 2008 recession, right, like the villain was like lenders and bad faith sort of activity in the financial industry that like took away average American savings and exploited them and all this. And like now I think that it's very much like maybe that storyline's tired, and it's just like it's AI and tech. So I also think that there's this sort of like natural like need for a villain thing that.
Yeah, but tech doesn't see itself that way, right? Like you're always a hero in your own story. And I think there's a very obvious attempt to paint China as the villain to justify everything that like tech is doing. You need a villain. But.
Right. Yeah. We're like Cold War times again too. I mean, it's effective. Like I think that the stuff, having a villain or a united enemy is really, really important for storylines. It's important for elections. It's, we're coming up on midterms and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of villains, Sam Altman called a code red to improve ChatGPT in the wake of Google's Gemini 3 launch. So there's their villain. There's their.
Do you think that was leaked? Do you think that like somebody leaked that? Because like, what is the strategy of like going public saying today we announced a code red internally? Like, what do you think about that part?
Sam is so savvy. I 100% assume that he expected that to become a story.
If you're Google, do you give a shit? Like, I'm sorry, you're like, oh, that's cute. Like, I don't know. That's why I just sort of like I can't even
I
think
don't
about
think
the
it's for
internal
Google.
story. Who do you think it's for?
I think it's just to keep OpenAI and like the
In the
center
headlines and
of every.
relevant? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I think a couple people said this, but like this reminded me of like Zuck's lockdown speech, which wasn't reported on at the time. I think that people came to learn about it like in Chaos Monkeys, the book, and then there was like a Vanity Fair
Mm.
article about it. But basically, in 2011, Zuck did this like impromptu all hands where he told us that Google Plus is launching and social's always been this kind of like cutesy experiment that they've been doing, but this time they are as an entire company completely focused on Google, and that is very scary for us because Google doesn't have to put ads on Google Plus. Their monetization stream does not rely on their social platform. So they could essentially create a clone of Facebook with no ads and create, an equal user experience as to one that Facebook had at the time, and take all of our users. And the fishbowl, his office with the lockdown sign. So then he unveiled this lockdown like neon logo, right, that flipped on, and it was to be on for the next 30 days. It happened to be right next to my desk, so like even the like some of the photos of it, like I'm just like awkwardly sitting there. So I remember this very vividly, but I also remember it as probably one of the most memorable speeches that Zuck gave. What that did was for the next 30 days, like it called every single person and basically made their commitment to their work like the highest priority. And it was pretty cool. Like I've never been a part of anything like that since. I wonder how effective it would be today, like at OpenAI. We've heard stories of OpenAI being 996 and all of these things, but like I don't know if that sort of, are we tired? Like, are we too tired? Have we seen this before? Like, does that really, are there people at OpenAI who are so driven by the mission? And I know it's laughable to think that like people at Facebook were so driven by it. I mean, I personally was, and I think many people were too. But I'm just kind of curious, like, who is that announcement for? Like, what is the result internally? I mean, I think we got some details, right? That like they're going to postpone ads, they're going to try to get out the next model like faster, right? And they're, to me, like as from a narrative standpoint, it looks like they're going to try to win on tech, right? That's what tech does. They try to win on better technology, and I don't know. I feel like there are so many other variables, like user experience and how the general public thinks about AI. Like there's all these other variables, but they're like, we're gonna win on better tech.
Everyone likes a good rivalry, from like Team Jen to Team Angelina, like Uber, Lyft, OpenAI, Google. That it's everyone and every stakeholder benefits from a good rivalry.
I mean, AI is weird because there are like literal leaderboards like that regularly shuffle, right? In terms of how the models are performing. And so I think it's a level of competition that we've just like never seen before, in that it's more measurable, in that like so many of these companies, or at least like the hyperscalers, OpenAI and Anthropic, are like sharing their revenue run rates and their like funding rounds and new valuations in fast succession. And so I think it is like deeply competitive. But to your point, like will this be the level of rallying cry that Zuck was able to inspire? I think when every week feels like a sprint and a race, it's probably going to be more incremental. And I think, I don't know, this is why I think it was more about the headlines than the internal morale and focus, because I feel like this whole part of the industry has been locked in an arms race, for the past couple of years, but especially this year with the new Variable being that like Google really, people have been calling Google a dark horse for a while, but with Gemini 3, I think they're emerging as like the biggest threat to OpenAI. And so it might actually be like a real code red, but it's like boy who cries wolf. Like everyone's been competing
You think
so
that he's called
aggressively.
code red before?
No, I just mean like it's already a highly competitive.
I see. I see.
This is not Zuck being like, oh, a competitor is launching something that's coming into our space, all hands on deck. It's like the battle we've been fighting every day,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
for the
Yep.
past 2 years continues. That's a less effective battle cry than like invader.
Yeah, I mean, also just the analogy of like a marathon, right? Like if you're fighting so many battles, right, with so many competitors 24/7, it's like where are you even getting the reserves to fight this new code red battle? Um, yeah, so that's interesting too. I mean, that's been my sort of argument in the group chat about OpenAI, which is like they're doing an excellent job playing offense, right? Like to me, their developer day was very much like, okay, everyone, like we're good. So we're gonna build everywhere here, so nobody should bother. And then like every now like Sora too, like everything has been like, nope, we're also gonna compete here, so don't bother. And like they've been doing an excellent job, but it's just from a sheer number standpoint, just so many fights to win or turf to defend that I know that OpenAI is growing very quickly. Lots of people are joining, but I still don't think it's a big enough organization to fight the number of battles that they have. So that's my call for OpenAI to like hire many, many, many more people. Be a gigantic employer of people in the Bay Area and beyond.
They don't need people, Helen. They have AI.
I mean, that feels like a perfect transition, or really, we're already there to our main topic for today, which is tech rivalries. And maybe we can break down some of the biggest ones we've seen directly, the ones that we are watching from the sidelines now. Helen, you already took us through the Facebook rivalry with Google, but I think Facebook was probably more often on the other side of these rivalries, where it was like the big company and then there were the upstarts that saw Facebook as their main competition.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that one of the genius things about Zuck is he no matter how dominant Facebook was, he did such an excellent job internally framing Facebook as like the tiny underdog, right? That's such a more exciting rallying cry and inspiring rallying cry than like we are dominant and we need to defend our turf, right? So, and it's so funny. I just shared that Google Plus story, but like looking back, it's really funny because there's no way Google Plus had a chance, right? But like, I swear at the time, it was truly like, oh crap, like this is existential. But I think the thing that got us talking about this was we saw that maybe the Kalshi fundraising announcement, and somebody pointed out that the Kalshi and Polymarket founders like truly, dislike each other, and that makes the Kalshi Polymarket sort of competition kind of more interesting. And that got us chatting about like, well, what other sort of have there been founder beefs, CEO beefs, and then to what extent do those like permeate throughout the rest of the organization and sort of become like company wide?
This is a random question, but what happened to the Zuck and Elon beef? Like, didn't people have them like in a fighting ring ready to box each other?
They came
Oh yeah.
And then it just disappeared. No, like it was like such a thing for a
Wasn't
while.
that during COVID?
That was post-COVID, Helen. I think what happened is Elon became politically powerful with Doge, and then it was in no one's best interest, including Zuck, to be in opposition to him. So that's 100% what happened, and it's why everyone's being so nice to David Zuck.
That's just the biggest like
Yeah.
founder rivalry that like stands out to me in tech. But
Well, okay, we mentioned a couple of other founder rivalries, or like somebody mentioned like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, or
and
maybe
Bill
that
Gates.
was yeah.
No, I mentioned that. I mean, that was a long-standing rivalry. Although I think it sounds like I want to know the details between the like Polymarket and Kalshi beef, because it sounds like it's like very personal. And I think that like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates took jabs at each other over the years, but I think there was also like a deep
Respect,
deep respect. And I remember when they came together on stage at it was pre-code conference. It was like D8 or whatever, like the all things D conference or D5. Like it was a really big moment to have them like both on stage together. So I think that was like a really great, it's like almost like a sports rivalry where like, having a great competitor like makes you better. When I read the Andre Agassi book, he talked about how Pete Sampras
Right.
made hurt his scores in the long run, but made him a much better tennis player. And so I think like the dream state is that having a great competitor in the tech ecosystem makes you like push harder, dream bigger, execute more aggressively than you ever would without them. So although with Kalshi and Polymarket, the battleground seems to be how much capital can you raise and at what valuation, because the Kalshi announcement, whether it was today or yesterday, I forget, was like $1 billion at $11 billion valuation, which is just insane.
Do we have a modern day? I mean, I guess the best one is like rippling Deel, which not to keep bringing that up, but
that is so not Steve Jobs and Bill Gates level. That's like rolling in the mud a little bit, right? Like, and it's very entertaining, although as we talked about it seems to have like diminishing entertainment returns now that we're on like the 10th cycle of beef. But yes, I mean, in terms of, I wonder if that one is also quite personal, like Polymarket and Kalshi, in addition to being like, company versus company. I mean, the one that I think of a lot because it was like the big rivalry when I was like growing up in my startup career was Lyft and Uber. That was like the classic head-to-head battle. And they had very different brands that made it fun, right? Like Uber was the like growth at all costs, aggressive, break the rules. Lyft had like the pink mustache and like a friendly brand. Initially, you had to sit in the front with the driver, so it was much more like people-centric. It was such a fun rivalry because I honestly couldn't tell you like the brand difference between Polymarket and Kalshi. Like I don't get like a different emotional feeling from either of them. But with Uber, it felt like you were picking a value set when you were choosing which service you were going to use for your ride sharing, and that was really fun. It was so far from like I was working in enterprise software, so it was just like enjoyable to watch from the sidelines.
Totally. It's funny now, right, to think back of that as being a rivalry. I feel like that the companies have taken two very, very different paths.
What are the different paths? Like they're both still doing ride sharing.
They're both still doing ride sharing, but I'd say that Uber has invested in many other different types of like delivery services, and they have Uber Freight, and like Lyft, I think, is still ride sharing, maybe with more of an investment in bikes. I don't know if that's supported by numbers because Uber has bikes too. But yeah, it just feels like Lyft did not go beyond ride sharing, and Uber did. So to us, Uber is still very much a part of our daily lives, even if, ride sharing is less. Like with, I don't know, like I feel like with autonomous driving too, I'd like very curious to see what Uber's sort of play is there too.
Now the new battleground is like Uber versus Waymo.
Right.
And it doesn't even feel like Lyft is really in that picture. There was some billboard that was like, you have alternatives or something for Lyft.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, unless it was like nano banana generated.
That's
but I'm
so
pretty sure
funny.
It was real. I saw a picture and I was like, oh, Lyft.
I do think the Uber, Lyft, and Kalshi Polymarket are interesting because I think those rivalries help consumers understand a new market, right? Because like Lyft was like really breaking ground, but then having the Lyft Uber dynamic, I think all of a sudden made that creation of the ride sharing market more apparent for consumers, and same for what Polymarket and Kalshi are doing. I mean, betting markets aren't new, but the way that they were interacting and the way that the prediction markets worked were new, and then they kind of like feed off of each other, and it gives investors an opportunity to choose a player, it gives consumers an opportunity to choose a player. It's great for the news cycle. It kind of just benefits all stakeholders in that establishment of that market.
I mean, I think it also benefits the employees, right? Because when you have that rivalry, like I said, like it's like you have this, sense of competition, which I think is very much part of human nature, right? But it's also like this, the rallying cry where you are painting yourself as the underdog. I never worked at Uber. I can't really imagine them seeing themselves as the underdog, like really at any point. But there
No.
were times where I feel like, Uber suffered from some like PR crises, and like you could imagine that internally it was challenging, right? And maybe there were rallying cries during that. Like, do you guys remember delete Uber, like the hashtag and all of that stuff? Like, I don't know, I had friends worked at Uber at the time, and they were pretty concerned that that would take off, and it kind of didn't. And in my opinion, has always been that Lyft just watched from the sidelines. Like, I think there were so many points in history where Lyft could have gone in and really like done something to gain more market share, and they just kind of sat there. But anyways,
This is reminding me, not to take us too far off track, but did anyone else listen to the Acquired episode on Coca-Cola?
no.
Like the best part of that episode so there's like 4 hours of beautiful business content.
Angela's
But like,
next camper van trip. Yeah.
yeah. This was our like Thanksgiving commute listening. But my favorite part of it was like Pepsi was a very savvy number two and like exploited Coca-Cola's weaknesses, like jumped in at the right moments, did its taste test campaign, the Pepsi
The Pepsi
challenge. Like
challenge.
it really,
They were also
really
like
went
on
for
the
it.
forefront of pop culture. I feel like a lot of the really memorable, like the Pepsi Super Bowl commercial, right, with Britney Spears, like they were excellent, yes. But I think the thing that we always go back to as this canonical example is that Pepsi would often feature Coca-Cola, right, in their commercials, or they would acknowledge Coca-Cola, like in the taste
Mm-hmm.
test. Coca-Cola, as the number one player, never acknowledges that Pepsi exists. And that is the correct move, which is why I think we had the debate in the group chat about like why New York Times should not have like acknowledged David Sachs's tweet. But anyways,
Well,
yeah.
we've talked about it on this podcast before, but I think what Perplexity did so well in the early days was position itself as a rival to Google when no one else was. And that got them so much earned media because everyone likes a rivalry. So every article that mentioned Google mentioned Perplexity, and that helps catapult them so much. But I think to your point, I don't think Google ever acknowledged them, but it didn't matter because it got Perplexity to where it needed to be.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I was like doing some Claude research on, famous tech rivalries, and it gave me some good answers. And then I was like, okay, well, what about in the AI age? And it was just like OpenAI versus literally everyone. And so that was to go back to like they are fighting. Their code red is like it could be truly against everyone, right? And
Well, they're the one to beat. They're the one to beat,
They're the
right?
one to
Like they
beat.
were the first mover. I mean, Google was the original first mover and then like didn't capitalize on that.
On AI,
And
I think of Google
on
as
AI.
okay. I think always think of Google as like second mover on search, right, or like internet browser.
Yeah, well, because the original Transformer paper came from Google, right? Attention is all you need was all the Google researchers.
Until Gemini 3, it felt like the prevailing narrative on Google was they like completely like missed their moment because they were the ones who were positioned to sort of lead the AI era. And so that's why like their resurgence is like so exciting and dramatic from a narrative standpoint. But ChatGPT was the one that consumerized AI, right? With the launch of ChatGPT. And so I think it has been the one to beat. I also think it very much plays into Sam Altman's strengths. Like I do not see Sam Altman as like a challenger. He's like the alpha player. And it's interesting though, because I think that it's a great position to be in, but it does mean because you're not able to acknowledge folks below you, when they attack effectively, it's very hard to defend yourself because your hands are a little bit tied. And I think it's interesting. I wonder if the code red is a signal that like ChatGPT is actually going to start picking on Google as the Goliath. Maybe it wants that challenger brand, and Google is a great Goliath, right? It's like so massive. It has this huge search business. There's a little bit of innovator's dilemma as it moves to AI in theory. And so maybe Sam is calling his shot that like, okay, like it was nice to be the number one, but actually maybe it's more advantageous for us to pick on Google from like a sort of narrative and brand standpoint now that Gemini 3 is so good, because Google has all these unfair advantages, right? Like we have our calendars and our Gmail and our docs, and it has so much data, and then of course it has the index of the entire web. And so And so maybe this is a bit of a narrative pivot, and we'll look back and be like, oh, this was the moment when ChatGPT became Pepsi.
Well, there was that announcement last night that like the person leading like maybe the AI efforts inside Apple is also leaving, and there's going to be a big shakeup and reorganization. I think the criticism was that their very research driven approach to AI was keeping sort of Apple out of the game, and seems like they're going to be like doing something different. So that's exciting. Like we want to see, what Apple has in store. I mean, I think we've been sort of waiting for them to enter the game because we all use Apple products, and it feels like the consumer touch point to AI is like something that they already own. So like if you're a founder today, when you look at these rivalries, are there some takeaways where you're like, should I fabricate a rivalry? Is it inspiring to have competitors? Like even if it's just internally, right? Like, or to Angela's point, to help give consumers like context or like, how to think about different products. So I don't know, like how would you think about rivalries? Because I think that when you're doing early stage investing, where there's, oftentimes a lot of players sort of gunning towards the same market. And I think that it's interesting to sort of explore, how to think about it.
My sort of like number one comms rule is like assume your audience is really smart. And so I wouldn't manufacture anything. Like if you want a rivalry, you have one. Like if you're a startup, you almost certainly have competitors, whether they are real, like you're actually in bake-offs with them, or they're more like future looking, or they're more philosophical. So like go for something that is actually like authentic to your company. And as we've already hinted about, you want to pick someone bigger than you, right? Like you want an aspirational competitor, because that is the thing that like pulls you up on a different level in people's minds. Like what Angela was saying about Perplexity going after Google search very early on. It made people think of them and categorize them totally differently than they would have otherwise. To use an example I know super well, back in my days at Box, even though Dropbox was probably our like most, natural peer competitor, we didn't go after Dropbox. We went after Microsoft because they had an enterprise product, SharePoint, and then eventually OneDrive that was much more aspirational for us in terms of like that enterprise branding and putting us like in a different box in people's minds. And so pick something that's real. But it doesn't have to be real today. It can be real in the future. Like if you're really successful, who will your competitor be? And then I think the thing that frustrates me about sort of startup positioning and storytelling today is it all feels kind of lazy, and it's about like valuations or who's raised the most or who's fastest to 100 million ARR. Like the stakes should be higher if you want to reach an audience outside of tech. And so like, why is the future better if you win versus that competitor? And I think like Anthropic has done a good job of this, right? Like they have a real mission around their battle with OpenAI for the future of AI, and they have that sort of AI safety first lens. And so I would also push any founder to think about like what are the stakes? What are the stakes of this battle? And have that be part of your story as well.
Stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to Great Chat. Have questions for us? Make sure to submit them at anothergreatchat.com. See you next week.